Okay, so next up on my list of gadgets I bring outdoors. So we have some snowshoes here, and these are just some MSR Evos. They're entry level snowshoes. They're pretty plastic here. They have these rubber bindings. You can get nicer bindings that actually have snap bindings along with metal materials, and I will eventually upgrade to something better than these. I find that these bindings themselves are floppy. They come undone and get really annoying in the wintertime when you just want them to work. So, but for what they are and what they can do with the traction, I have used these many times and have got me out of the pickle in terms of deep, soft snow. These definitely allow you to get around faster. So something to really keep in mind is that anything with the outdoor gear quality is always going to come at a cost. Sometimes you can get really good deals on stuff, but you're going to have to pay for the nicer gear that has been engineered to last longer and be more useful and easier to use. And so this is a fine example of the cheaper versions are going to have stuff like this versus the traditional binding. So snowshoes, don't leave home without them if it's wintertime. Next up on our list, we have some trekking poles here. These are Black Diamond, I want to say Black Diamond Expedition poles. I don't know the exact model. They are the, if I take this off, I can show you. They are the Expedition 3 flick lock trekking poles. So these poles are pretty much aluminum. They are not the lightest. They're meant for heavy duty. Again, I am not talking about ultralight. I'm talking about heavy duty aspects and reliability. And these are pretty entry level, but they do a great job. And I've used these multiple times in the wintertime. These clips that they're connecting them do get lost, so don't expect to, unless you're really, really good at keeping track of stuff like this, you will lose these, and I've lost a few, and since then have replaced them with other ones. But the trekking pole itself does have a 3-part extension, and you can also take these tips off or something and just have them used for more summertime. They didn't come with any tips for this, which some do, but all in all, these have been a really solid purchase, and I wish I had these actually the other day when I was climbing up a mountain when it was spring and there's still snow there and I had no traction. I really wish I had these. So trekking poles are one of those things where you don't think they're useful, but there's many use cases that you can use them to pitch your tent, fly and tarps, along with using them as a pole you stick in the ground when you're at camp, along with a tool you can use on the trail to keep your traction and balance in place. I also really like how the poles themselves have these long grips, so you can really choke up if you're going up, and then you can sit back if you're pulling up a load like a poke sled or something like that. So these were $100 at REI, solid purchase, and something I don't leave home without if it's wintertime. Gadget I need. Okay, so next up we have something that's kind of fun. This probably isn't on the list of most people's adventure items, gadgets they'd bring out, but I have gotten into the idea of prospecting and just finding old trinkets and relics in buildings in the woods, and so I picked up a few cheap entry-level detectors that I can use to find stuff along the way. So here we just have it's a pinpointer. This is used to when you are you actually get a hit on the bigger metal detector, and then you can point at where it is in the ground, and it has a pretty simple function. This is a knockoff brand. It's one of those things where it was too good to be true in terms of the price, and you get it. And this is a knockoff brand to a Garrett pointer, which is going to cost around $130, $140. This one was around $30. But besides them trying to copy the brand, it works pretty good. And so, you in this case, you're not necessarily you're actually getting a good deal for the price you're paying there. Another metal detector. I don't actually have a battery in it, but this is more of a traditional security style one. I picked this up because I thought it was cool. It's like a mini metal detector. It doesn't have very many features. This was around 35 bucks. It's made of, all this is made of plastic, obviously, because if it had aluminum or metal, it'd be hard to, detect stuff in the ground versus in the object. This is pretty, it's not the sturdiest, but if you pack this in and you have a scenario where you need to find something, it will get the job done. And it has two options. It has the light and the sound, and then just the light feature, which this red light here, LED, will light up when it's time to actually hit something. So no discrimination modes on this. It kind of picks up all metal. So not really realistic for hunting for goods versus trash metal. It's going to pick up everything and anything. So maybe just good for browsing or searching very lightly and then digging deeper with the pointer itself. The cool thing about both these is they fit nicely in a bag, and you can pack them away without taking up too much space, and it makes it a nice little kit to have. Now behind those, I have a really fun kind of special entry-level detector. And for all you your metal detecting gurus out there, you're probably going to have mixed feelings and reviews about this device here. It is kind of a cheaply made entry-level gimmick. It's not. I wouldn't say it's gimmicky, because I think the foaming aspect of it is pretty awesome, but the quality in terms of what it's going to be able to do for you compared to other devices in the price point, you're going to get better metal detecting out of other metal detectors. And I'd have to actually go side by side to prove that in person, because that may not be the case for all. I will say I do have a Bounty Hunter 4 metal detector. I spent since then is around the price point of this, which was $200. But since I got it for $100 something, so that has been of great value in using that. And you can see that metal detector in action in one of my other videos of me searching on my lost GoPro. I brought that out. What I liked about this metal detector that didn't have, and they give you this little sticker to put camo on, but who's really going to be camouflaging with that in the woods with something that's kind of plastic and not too durable. But what I liked about this is that it folds down into a really cool package, and that's really what you're paying for, in my opinion. So you extend the arm like so, and then you can extend this out like so and bring it out, and then you have a pretty versatile metal detector that has discrimination modes on it, and it has LED, it has a Bluetooth, it has a pinpointer, and it basically has a lot that you'd have in a more higher end metal detector, so that you can discriminate all the trash out and find things in the ground. From my understanding and my experience, these work around 10 to 12 inches to the ground. You can pick stuff up depending on the kind of soil, but it does have slower response time. So when you're swinging it, if you swing it too fast, it can miss stuff, so you have to kind of go slow and steady to pick up resources. But it's a fun little contraption. It also packs down nicely and fits on the outside of my backpack, strapped in like you would put tent poles or something in the side there. And so it becomes a very convenient gadget to bring out there to treasure hunt, which is why it's on my list and part of my arsenal. Okay, moving right along, we are moving on to GPS devices. In front of me here, now these are just two of many devices you can have. There are devices you can actually use GPS to communicate via text and send messages to let people know where you are. These are not those. I don't own any of those that I really use. I will probably end up investing in a Garmin Reach, I think it's called, which has those capabilities along with GPS. But the two I do own and use frequently when I go out are my Phoenix 5X GPS watch, and then I have this eTrex 20X GPS device. And the practicality for these are, you know, immense in terms of when they can really get you out of trouble and when you don't really need to use them. I usually run this most of the time when I'm out there, and I use this as a backup on my wrists. The battery in this and the sensor, specifically GPS sensor, when using the mapping, drains this battery to where it only lasts for, it doesn't last nearly as long as it would if you're just using the watch features, which is weeks. And so you really never want to use the GPS on your watch, and that's one of the biggest mistakes I've learned in using the device. It also is kind of slow. We're obviously indoors, so it's not going to be able to pick up the GPS as fast. But the GPS signal itself is slower, and again, you can't really blame this small device for being slower than something that big is doing a lot in a small package. So it's going to have, you know, take longer. But besides that, I've been in scenarios to where it's wintertime, I can't find the trail, and this watch saved me. And I used it, and it has all the smartwatch features you'd expect, like an Apple Watch or an Android smartwatch. So I highly recommend something like a Phoenix 5X, and they have newer ones out. This was one around $500. It's got like sapphire glass, so it doesn't scratch. A lot of cool features. And the 5X over like the 3X, in my opinion, is worth the extra money with the stuff you get. And the newer ones are even cooler than this. So, but that's backup. Most of the time I'm using my Trex here, eTrex, and I don't think I have batteries in it. Oh, I do, so I can show you kind of what that looks like. Take it out of its case here. So this is a case, and then, okay, so it looks like what happens with this thing is that if you don't have, oh, there we go. Sometimes you don't have a full battery, it won't actually boot up. It'll just stay on the loading screen. So this one's also looking for the map, and it should find it, and no problem. And I use this the majority of my time when I'm backpacking. I have all the trails loaded in there. I have routes I've created to put in here. And I wasn't sure if that was like a cracked screen. I think that just has something to do with, not cracked, but it just looks weird. But this device was like 100, I think I got it for 100 something bucks, and is really useful, and you can keep it running, and it has a lot more, it does a lot better with a battery efficiency. It also just takes AA, so you can replace them, although it will drain them if you keep it on, and so you want to turn it off when you're not using it. But this is my go-to my GPS device I use. It was cheap, it's reliable, and it's pretty straightforward. And, you know, it gets the job done and allows me to have this as a backup. So that's it for my GPS devices. Okay, so next up we have walkie-talkies, and really this is kind of a broad category because there's obviously different types. Most consumers know walkie-talkies as something that you can push to talk over the radio, frequencies and that you see in the world, but there are different types, and so I have two here. I have your typical FRS for Family Radio Service walkie-talkies, talkabouts we're used to seeing, which are legal to use for anybody, and I'm just showing you right now. This is the screen. Pretty straightforward. Has preset channels along with a fixed antenna here, and is most traditionally used for like families and going out to communicate. Very valuable device, something that you can use to communicate with your friends on the trail, obviously when there's no cellular service and you don't have ways to communicate elsewise. So valuable to have. This particular model has like the weather along with the scan features, and it can scan through the FRS. Now this is just kind of an entry level. As you get more involved with ham radios or stuff that can communicate, transponders, transmitters. Here I have a couple of Baofangs. These are Chinese-made hand radios, and what's important to know about these, if you are familiar, is that these are not legal to transmit on in the U.S. They don't meet the FCC recently passed regulations on these. You need to be a licensed user. So I have them programmed to receive in emergency cases only, and I can use a program to do that right here. If I just go through these, you can see I have all the different channels set, and there's different kinds. I have the weather along with some repeaters set up if I had to use them and eventually get my certification there. So these are great to have because you can communicate long distances and get help, and you can reach different frequencies. You can pick up it's not recommended to play around with these and transmit if you don't know what you're doing. I actually have used software called Chirp software to disable this button so I can't get in trouble for having these on. And it allows for me to actually listen in, and if I have to, there's a few channels I have programmed frequencies that I can ask for help, and I'll just show you those real quick just so you have those for your own knowledge. So if I go down to my last channels, I have what's called the Help 1, Help 2, and Help 1s. And I'll just toggle that, and I can go to 0, 6, 7. And so basically the top is the same channel, but one is the frequency and one is the actual labeled version. So if I were to click this right here, this would be a frequency where I can try to get help if I was in trouble. But again, not something you want to mess around with. You can get a lot of trouble, get fined, and good to have in your pack. I have two setups here. I have my long range setup. This is a 8 watt with a NA771, another knockoff Chinese made device. The Chinese like to copy a lot of the better versions. I think this is usually a Japanese made company, but it does work pretty well in terms of the range on this. I can pick up all in the city of Boston. I can pretty much pick up all the frequencies I'm going to hear from law enforcement, emergency, repeaters, miles and miles away. So interesting little device, and I would use this to reach out to people, probably transmit on this one if I had to. And then if you're just working in close quarters and you just want to receive stuff, you can just use a smaller, more compact version. This is the same radio, or the ham radio. This is an 8 watt. This is only a 5 watt or 4 watt. And it has a stubby little antenna which doesn't pick up pretty much anything in the city that well. I drove around with this, testing it out, and the antenna itself was pretty weak compared to this bad boy. So although this is floppy and goofy, there's a meaning behind having all the extra antenna there versus this one. I would say this one's probably good if you're in a construction zone or in an area of close quarters where you don't need to transmit or respond that far. The antenna itself does that pretty well. So these are devices I would recommend, some kind of walkie-talkie device to communicate if you don't want cellular service. Okay, so next up we have pack shovels, and I kind of broke this down into, again, another generic category of different kinds of shovels you may have. The three I have in front of me here all kind of serve a different purpose, but can be used in similar ways. This one I'll just do first because to get out of the way is a traditional trench-style military shovel you would use to dig stuff up. It has if I loosen this up a little bit for you, it has a hoe side to it, so you can actually dig stuff, and then it has, oops, make sure this is coming apart correctly. Alright, there we go. And it has your traditional shovel. You can use it as a hoe, and then there's a nice big handle here. We've all seen this style of trench shovels that you can use in the outdoors. I would say the advantage to that is that it packs down really nicely, The disadvantage is it's pretty small, and the ergonomics of how you're going to be digging isn't going to be as comfortable as a bigger shovel that extends more. Here I have a different style shovel. This is a snow shovel. This is a black diamond, what is it called? I think it's a Transfer 3 they call it. And I know it's kind of like, it's pretty tight here, and I'm trying to fit everything in here for you. The Transfer 3 shovel is something I use in the winter all the time. It's good when you get to camp, when you're flat, just digging in the snow. It has a solid shovel connected to the shaft here, along with the extension to where you can extend it out and make it ergonomically comfortable, like I was talking about before. One big thing to note when you are getting any kind of shovel, and specifically this style shovel where it has a removable shovel part so you can pack it down. A lot of times this area will break in a shovel, right? It doesn't matter what kind of shovel. So what's really cool about this one is they've reinforced the area where you get a lot of the breaking point, and you can still pack it down. So a good quality snow shovel, or a shovel in general, will have a reinforced area here, and it'll be pretty light and swift. And there's, there's some other cool things, like you see there's holes in the shovel so you can connect it with ropes or carabiners to your pack, and other ways to make sure you pack it away. I usually just put this on the outside, like similar to with that metal detector I shared earlier. And as you can see, it's the Transfer 3 shovel that was around, I want to say $50. So solid investment, and wouldn't leave home without it. Lastly, I want to talk about a very unique shovel I have here. This is a multi-tool shovel, and multi-tool meaning in the shaft there's a bunch of different tools, and I could have put this in the multi-tool section, but I didn't want to mix it up because it's kind of more of a shovel than a multi-tool. I mean, it is a multi-tool, but I wouldn't really use the other multi-tool stuff. So here it has, you can see a screwdriver bit that you can change out, and there's a few different sides there. I'm not going to pull it out, along with a tip that you would use to break glass. If I unscrew the tip here, it's got a fire steel in there, and then of course, if I keep on taking it apart right here, you can show you the other stuff we have. So in this one we have a little saw blade here, and this is where you would strike that fire steel probably. And then you have just your traditional shovel. And so there you go. It's pretty beat up. I use this a lot for campfires when I go camping. It is missing a bolt there. I have to replace that. But this seems to stick in pretty well. This works very similar to the trench shovel, to where you can unscrew it and then it folds, and you can use it as a hoe or something to dig up other than with force, other than just striking it straight down. And then there's a lot of interesting little things like you can do here. This is a root saw, it's called, and and then it also has kind of a blade here. So you can technically chop with this like an axe. Does it work very well? This works all right. It's not that sharp. I will say though, for the price of this and the multi-tool gimmicky aspects of it, it's actually a pretty solid tool. This is not cheap by any means. Like these very, very sturdy, very solid stainless, and it's pretty rugged. When you swing it, it does feel pretty solid. It is super heavy. It's not like it's an ultralight material, so you're definitely not going to probably pack around with this. This is something I would bring out with my metal detector in a bag, just digging, so I don't have to use a small little trench shovel like behind there. So that's pretty much it, is having some kind of packable shovel is a good gadget. Okay, so next up we have a gadget I would love to use more, but never seem to have the space or a location to where I can use it like I would want to. But with that being said, I still own it and always think about it as an option when I go out, depending on where I end up. So in front of me here, I have 2 rod and reels. These are telescopic rods, or rods, not reels. So the rod is the this part, and you can see they just break down, and they are pretty good. And I guess if you were to take the reel off, this is really packable. The problem is that this becomes a big issue, and I like to try to keep these on so that I don't have to fiddle with them. But more realistically, you'd probably take this off every time you pack it here. But I have 2 different types. These both were pretty affordable. A lot of my gear, a lot of the gadget stuff is like bought on Amazon or eBay, and so it's going to be kind of a Chinese brand that has good materials and quality and gets good reviews, but is a lot more affordable than the options you'll get out there. And I tend to trust some things that are not electronics, more mechanical stuff like this. These are really well made versus something like a camera, like a cheap camera. I bought an actual camcorder in China where they make it look like a Sony, and then it ends up being some cheap hardware on the inside that's worthless. But for these, the make and the quality are really good for the price. I think these were both around $30. They are, I want to say they're fiberglass. It's fiberglass and steel. So it's super light but super strong. The reels themselves seem pretty heavy, but they have pretty smooth action for the price. Again, for the price point, you're not going to get a 5-star reel for these cheap prices. But for what they are and what they can do, and the packability in these, they're great options here. And so this one is, again, a little bit bigger, so you can get, I think, extends a lot. I want to say this is 10, this one's more like 8 feet, but I could be wrong. Realistically, if I'm not sure if I'm going to go, but I want to have something, I'll probably bring the small one. If I know I'm definitely going to go fish, I would bring maybe the big one. But, if it's a fishing trip, I'd probably bring 2 of these in my pack if I'm backpacking. And there's obviously no car to bring regular reels in. So on top of those, the rod and reel options we have here, I have a little mini tackle box that has a bunch of fun stuff in it, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on the stuff I carry. I'll just show you real quick the different kind of things you can bring. This is all related to freshwater, and so everything's going to be smaller than if you have a saltwater. But I have a lot of spinners. These are really popular spinners here, and I have a bunch of, oops, I got tangled up here. Cool little spinner baits you can use, and here I have just I think this is supposed to be a tadpole or a little mini frog on a couple of weights and a hook. This is a little mini grub worm here, and you can see I have extra frogs there. I have a couple of spoons. I have a bobber here. And see another spinner. I like using spinners a lot just because I like the mechanical aspects of those. And then I'll just show you on the other side, we have more of the same, but a few different things that might be interesting. So I'll just flip this over and deal with that later. So on this side, I have, you see a little bit more bigger. These are probably what I would use on the bigger rod if I was trying to catch some big lake fish or something. These are some more cool little tackle pieces. If I can get them untangled. I can't, but there's 2 different colorations. And, I have, again, just showing you different types. Try not to hook myself here. This is looks like a black one here. And then one of my favorite ones is this 2-piece little minnow fish here, which I don't know how well it works, but I just like that it's 2 pieces, and it looks, it's a pretty solid little tackle piece there. So with this tackle box and those 2 rods, I probably wouldn't need to bring extra line. but you may also want to pack extra line if you weren't sure you're going to have enough or it breaks. But this is a small little package that I can pack along with those, and it becomes a very valuable resource for gathering, specifically if you know it's going to be a fishing trip and you're going to be eating a lot what you catch. You know, this is a great way to catch fish, assuming you have the rights and the legal aspects out of the way and the license in place.